everyone. Welcome to Geek Out for October. I'm Phoebe Go. I'm a cloud architect here in Sydney. I'm joined by Matt Moore, who is our guest geek today. And we're going to be talking about SaaS Backup and doing a bit of a demo of it so you can have a look. And please put your questions into the chat. We have, as always, we have prizes for the best questions, and we love answering tricky questions. So if you've got anything that comes to mind, just throw it into the chat. I will pick them up as we go, and anything else we'll answer at the end or over an email. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. We've got about 45 minutes, and let's get started. So today's guest geek is Matt Moore. He's joining me here today in Sydney. Matt, can you tell the guys about who you are, what you do, and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, great. So I'm Matt Moore, as Phoebe's mentioned. I've been with NetApp for a little close to 2 years. And my mandate really is to look after the CDS and CI portfolio, which I'm sure most of you know on the call as the cloud product set for NetApp, and also what we call private cloud, which is Storage Grid, Object Store, and HCI. So you get hold of me really easily. Most, I'm sure, on the call will know who I am, but LinkedIn's probably the best way, to be honest, if you don't have my contact details. And at the moment, I'm looking after the top 8 accounts in Australia. That's
cool. Matt is also one of the people who loves to come to our events and stand on the booth and have a chat about what you're doing. So, and I've always appreciated having him around. He's a very funny guy. So we're going to talk about these things today. There's going to be, I guess, just an overview of what SaaS is and the data protection components about software as a service. We'll talk specifically about Office 365 and a little bit about Salesforce, and then we'll jump straight into the demo. And then, of course, at the end, I'll go through what some of the events are coming up and where you can get a hold of us. So, Matt, what is SaaS? For the uninitiated and for the relatively not so smart people like myself, what is software as a service? Why is it so big, and why do we care?
Yeah, look, I think there's been, we've obviously had SaaS Backup in country in Australia now for a bit over a year. There was a considerable amount of education and market for customers and partners. There was a idea that somehow magically the platform as a service that Microsoft delivered for 365 naturally protected your data. And as we all know, that's not necessarily quite as accurate as it could be. And we'll dive into that a bit later on in the slides. But so there was a long, probably an 8-9 month arduous re-education of the market to let them know that, in fact, Microsoft didn't actually back them up and you were at risk. And I always found it amusing. I had a conversation last week with a very large company in Australia, and Microsoft told them to use Litigation Hold. And they thought that was a backup. It was baffling to me that you would assume litigation is backup.
So like I said, I like to ask lots of questions. Why does Litigation Hold exist then? What is it? What is it? What does it do? Why do we?
Right.
And why would Microsoft maybe suggest that as a backup solution?
Well, I think to be quite honest with you, I think Microsoft don't have a good answer here for backup, right? And if you think about it, take a moment and say, okay, I back up for what reason? You back up because you want to recover. Otherwise, you wouldn't back up, right? So litigation, and that's a nice segue to litigation. Litigation Hold is there specifically for email or mailbox accounts where you have to be audited. And you have to be very clear about the nature of that audit. That's litigation. By telling large customers that have 50,000 mailboxes to put Litigation Hold as a method by backup, it's a little bit baffling. But you've got to take a step back and realise that Microsoft don't have an answer here for protection. So litigation is their only answer, and it's the easiest one to do because the admin can just go all mailboxes, put on litigation.
So I guess in a way, what Microsoft are really good at, and in Office 365 on that platform, is around high availability of the solution and disaster recovery of the solution. So in what cases, I mean, there's a couple there on the slides. I mean, what are the cases where backup is relevant, where maybe having high availability or having some sort of protection against deletion is not going to solve the backup problem?
Not really. And look, litigation is fantastic to a certain degree in the sense that you can recover the email and you can recover some of the files. What it doesn't cover you for is OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. So, it's one part of a larger subset of functions. And I just don't think it's a very smart idea to use litigation as a wide answer. And SaaS Backup, by general, what I love about it is it's easy. That same customer I met with last week that has, an obscene amount of mailboxes, we showed them the demo and we signed them up for a trial, 5 users. He couldn't believe that within 5 minutes he was backing up 5 users. And I think that's the simplicity argument here is what litigation, I don't know if you've done a litigation restore, but it's 21 clicks through the console and web page that runs 365. So it's not very easy and it's not very pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, you gave me this slide earlier and I was just reading through it. This is essentially maybe you could talk a little bit about the ways that you can currently do various types of data protection inside Office 365 as an example. Exchange and SharePoint. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, again, we've learnt ourselves about some of the shortfalls, right? A lot of times when we deal with, not really competitive per se, but getting a baseline on what the platform does versus what it should do. And the learning we'll take from that is that you're right, Microsoft do very, very well giving you access to your data. There's a durability argument, which I think is very valid. What they don't give you a really good idea of is, this nature of past 30 days, there's no access. So litigation is now a method by which you restore files, and that's not very pleasant. You have to pay for inactive mailboxes. So everything you have, and every existing customer or every single user who leaves, you now pay litigation on. It starts getting really expensive. There are some gaps on backups, so time it takes to restore and get the data actually protected. And recycle bins, this is the one that I think is the most common I get typically is, but I can go almost 3 months in my recycle bin. Yeah, that's true. But at what point do you think email gets restored? It's not typically within 90 days, right? The ones you really need are typically 6 months back. And it's the whole gambit of stuff. I mean, I'll give you another classic example. A very large bank here in Australia, one of the execs mistakenly deleted her entire top folder.
Oh.
Now, she had thousands of folders, and they went to recover it, and yes, they were able to as part of a Microsoft exception process.
Right.
But the restore lost all the folder structure.
Oh, no.
So just tens of thousands of emails and files that made no sense anymore.
So that's a really good question. I mean, I guess when I do a restore of emails, I might want to restore it back to where it was, but I might also want to, I guess you might also want to restore it somewhere else as well, right?
Yep.
So I guess looking at these sorts of approaches, it's really restoring it back to where it was, or in litigation hold, not deleting it in the first place and having a pointer to. Yeah,
exactly right. And I think what it comes down to is just one of the hardest things to identify is the soft cost of operation. And everyone talks about it, I've got 5 guys or 5 people doing it. Well, that's a cost, right? And yes, I accept the soft cost, but I'd much rather have a 5-minute backing up and a 5-minute restore behavior where I can just recover as I need and have all those options available to me. And what I like about SaaS Backup from us is it puts all that data away from the platform. It's sitting in Amazon, completely separate from the 365 environment. Now, we could and happily do restore and backup to blob. So naturally in the platform. I just think if you had a protection strategy for on-prem that was valid and it had complete separation of where your Exchange environment was and where your backups were, why would that change by going to a platform? It shouldn't, right?
Okay, so let's jump into SaaS Backup. What is SaaS Backup and NetApp SaaS Backup, and what does it do, and why should we care, I guess?
Yeah, look, I think it just comes back to that old statement, right, which is, it's all about risk and mitigation of risk. Why do we have insurance policies for our phones and our cars and our houses, right? We do that because we don't, the downside of not insuring is far worse than insuring. And that's the principle, right? It's the nature of going and getting an insurance policy. What I love about NetApp SaaS Backup is it's, some dollars, $4 or $5, $10 per user per month per year. I mean, it's not a lot of money to get that protection. Now, the equivalent cost to run that on-prem was, I don't know, probably hundreds of dollars per user per month, an equivalent, right? So the price has really dropped down, and that's what I love about it. Simplicity, ease of use, very easy to restore, and what I also love is flexibility. If you don't like the pre-built SaaS package, which is the control plane and pre-built storage that we give you, which, by the way, is unlimited amount of data per user. It's just retention plan. I love that. That's risk on NetApp. If you go nuts and each user consumes 10 terabytes, that's on us. And I think that's a really important thing to reinforce. If I go and look at competitors in the market, what they do is use local storage to provide the backup source. So that's a lot of money per user per month if you include it. And there's a very bad habit I'm seeing in the market where it's just control plane from our competitors and we don't compare control plane just from us. So there's an overall cost, I think, that needs people to realise that we're actually really, really cost effective, especially when you include the idea that we don't charge for that space. It's just retention.
Yeah. So what is SaaS Backup? I mean, what does it run on? Do I need to deploy agents? Do I need media servers, tape library? How does it actually? Yeah,
and this is the great thing about SaaS Backup, right? All it does, in essence, is impersonate an admin account or the user inside the 365 environment. It connects to it via the control plane. The control plane says, here's the user to impersonate against, and then it streams the data into Amazon. And SaaS Backup itself is a really good demonstration of NetApp's DevOps behavior. It is running containers, it's running in Amazon, it's got Australian AZs, it's using MongoDB. It's all this really cool stuff that we talk about in the New World Order. We're doing it ourselves. And in fact, one of the reasons why we bought StackPoint was because of SaaS Backup, right? Because we're maintaining a lot of containers. So I love this interdependency of what SaaS Backup is and how it operates. Now, the little nuance there is if you decide not to use the self-contained solution from us and you want to run on-prem object store like StorageGrid, which I think is a good answer, by the way, for a lot of customers, then you would need to have a VM, a couple of VMs running locally to be able to broker that conversation from 365 down into the object store.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so NetApp's object store StorageGrid, I think, has been on a Geek Out previously, so we can put that into the show notes. And also, if you are interested, do reach out and maybe we'll have another Geek Out on that. It's one of my favorite products, so I love talking about it. So just a little bit more on SaaS Backup, though. So how do we actually, so I'm not deploying any media agents. No. I'm not installing anything into the end users. You talked about it streaming. Is it using APIs? Is it how am I logging into it? Is it purely on the web interface, or is there an API behind it?
Well, I think the combination is that you get, in essence, basically all we're doing is when we talk about impersonating a user, what we mean is if a user was naturally accessing their data set, that's what we're using. So it's the same set of consistent access to Microsoft. We're not doing anything new or different. How we back that data up, obviously being NetApp, we're very smart about that behavior. We probably have the best at-scale solution as far as I'm concerned. We did a trial in the US for 100,000 mailboxes, and we nailed everyone else in the market because we're just that effective in getting data baselined and then streamed and copied down to the equivalent end, which was for this customer object store.
Yeah, so we're making very efficient queries. And I think there was a question there that just came through in the chat about performance using SaaS Backup into AWS. So yeah, definitely there are variables, I guess, which would be around mailbox size and
absolutely
how many files you've got in SharePoint and so on.
Yeah, so there's a baseline behavior. So just like any kind of backup behavior, you take a baseline and then it's differentials, and it's differentials forever. And that's on us to maintain catalog and run. And we do that for a long time anyway, right? We've been doing that for 26 years, arguably. So yes, there is a component of how big is your pipe, and we will leverage your pipe to access as we're doing it. But the reality is, once it's there are some minor restrictions on performance. Microsoft themselves, if you start to really hammer Microsoft from a backup perspective, they will actually throttle you. So we saw that in that 100,000 mailbox test. Microsoft throttled everyone on that basis because they're going, well, why is there such a massive amount of data streaming out, right? It's unusual behaviour. We're learning to discuss that with Microsoft, and so they get a better idea what that looks like from us.
Sure. And I guess in that sense, I mean, does SaaS Backup pause jobs if you do hit some kind of limit? Does it queue them up for later? Yeah, so it'll keep trying, and then it'll do errors. So you'll get an error log saying it failed for some reason. It doesn't happen very often, which I think I love. What I also really enjoy is the people that look after SaaS Backup. When you go to them with a problem, and I recommend anybody going to cloud.netapp.com, signing up for it, the chat process is probably the best way to log a support case, over and above normal. I'm not saying you don't do the normal case, but what I've found is it's very responsive to fix a problem. Yeah, that's what I do like about SaaS offerings compared to anything
old
that you
school
deploy.
Way, right?
Yeah, you can get instantaneous, really proactive reaction responses.
And to give you an example of that, we had a customer just recently with a failed job, and we couldn't figure out why it failed. They jumped into cloud.netapp.com, which they had already signed up for. They jumped on, Niaz, bless him, already had an answer for it, because he had seen it on our logs, and said, just restart should work now. And the customer did, and it restarted straight away. Right, I mean,
so
I love that.
Niaz is part of our SaaS Backup team.
Right. It's amazing. I don't know how many hours you sleep, but it can't be many.
There's probably several Niazes in the world. We're just calling them all the same thing. So up there, I've put up the slide that you've shared around the key features of SaaS Backup. Definitely, I guess, we can read through those, but I think more importantly is how are we looking at what else needs, what's the kind of direction do you see in terms of what is our vision for SaaS Backup? I mean, these are great features, but where are we going and what's kind of coming down the line? Down the line, yeah. Look, I think that you can share without breaking any NDAs. Yeah, which is actually quite difficult. If anyone's going to Insight, I highly recommend you jumping on the SaaS Backup tracks. Definitely worth seeing what's coming up, because there will be a few announcements at Insight. But I think as a general rule, what you're going to see from us is the continued ecosystem support from Microsoft. So what I mean by that is we started out with just the first 3, and then we added in public teams, and then we've added in, App Dynamics very shortly. So all these things will start to fill out. So we are going to cover the entirety or the ecosystem that is 365, which is appropriate. As I'm sure people have already seen, we already had Salesforce live. We now have, and as we go through, we will add in other platforms. Yeah, and it's also, I guess, another one that I really like is that it's actually running in ANZ, so as a local service. So just a little bit on that local service. Is it running? Can you tell me a bit more about when we say it's running in region? What does that actually mean? Does any data ever go back to? No, so correct. So if you buy into the full package solution from NetApp, so that's the control plane and the storage being in Sydney in Amazon, to each of the AZs, the control plane is spread out across each of the AZs, but that component, the control plane, really does nothing. It basically does licensing and control of the fact that we're initiating. Other than that, that's what it does. So there's no data that actually leaves to get out of Australia, which I love. There are APRA requirements, as I'm sure people know on the call, that 2 weeks ago they came out and we're very clear about your requirements. What I love about this is you have an exit strategy. So that's one of the requirements of APRA is, yes, you're using a platform, we agree the platform is a good idea, but you must have an idea of how to get away from the platform at some point. And by using this, you naturally have an exit strategy, because that data is now in Amazon, and you can do a PSD export of the entire environment if you so wish to, right? For people that want even more secure than that, then Object Store, i.e. Storage Grid on-prem, is a perfect answer. Yeah, so I like that you touched on security. I guess that is one of the key things moving into a platform as software as a service like Office 365. What kind of security features and capabilities do we have in SaaS Backup?
So SaaS Backup itself is extremely secure. So we run a bunch of internal encryption. So everything in transit's encrypted. We encrypt at rest. We run those keys ourselves. If you don't like that concept, you can actually run again your own function there. And it, what I love about here is choice. And I think NetApp is consistent in its behaviour, which is, here is a solution that's really easy. If you don't like that, it's okay. I have a bunch of other options that will meet your requirements. And I think that's the right sort of place to be, rather than locking people in. And our competitors don't have a SaaS offering, right, to the same degree that we do. It's either all on-prem or in cloud, but only a part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, so when you say a part of the ecosystem, you mean?
Just Exchange, for example, or maybe Exchange in OneDrive. It doesn't cover SharePoint, it doesn't cover Teams, et cetera, et cetera. And
that's probably a good time to chat about how do we license SaaS Backup. So is it on Exchange, or is it per user?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So that's another thing that gets a little bit confusing in the field, is that there's a perception that we charge for each of the eco components of 365, and that's not true. We charge a dollar value per user, per month, per year for the retention period, and it covers the entire ecosystem for 365. And I really like the idea because now it's a simple process.
Oh, sorry.
And the idea being is it's X dollars per user per month, and unlimited space, and it's just a retention period that you pay for. And obviously, if you go from 1 year, 3 years, 7 years, or unlimited, obviously that price is going to increase per user, right? Because that's a retention period. But other than that, it's that simple. And as a calculator on cloud.netapp.com, it will tell you what your kind of base cost looks like.
Right.
And what I also like is, because we're doing marketplace purchasing here, it's very easy then to go with a partner and say, hey, I want to buy SaaS Backup. And recently, Amazon have now released the ability to wrap private offers together inside marketplace. So it makes it very easy now for a customer to achieve what they want, and the partner to get paid as well at the same time, which I really like.
So you can buy this, just to clarify that point, you can buy this on the AWS Marketplace?
Yeah, and Azure Marketplace also.
And the Azure Marketplace, and you can also talk to your friendly local partner or NetApp. Okay, cool. Yeah. Great, so I gave away the next slide. We're going to jump into a demo. And in order to do that, I need to change screen. So, to save Matt talking, just as a funny note, Matt chipped his tooth this morning, so I'm very surprised that he's able to talk at all, and I'm very pleased that he has just talked to us for the last 20 minutes. But I'll run through the demo, and as you have questions, I'll pick them up in the chat, so please throw them my way. If you have not logged into cloud.netapp.com, this is Cloud Central. This is what it looks like today. It updates regularly, and this is the link up here for SaaS Backup. So do click through that and have a look at the details. You can also start the trial or register for Salesforce. Once you have started a trial or signed up, you can log in through Cloud Central, or you can log in directly to saasbackup.netapp.com. As you see, there are different regions that we can log into. Being Australian, we'll use ANZ, and we can log in actually using our Office 365 account. So we can use our existing services to log in, and jump in whenever you have a thought, Matt.
One thing I like about the previous thing you're at, one of the things that was won us a deal specifically was the fact that they could use a NetApp SSO rather than using the 365 account. The reason why that's interesting for the customer was, if 365 is down, you can't use your 365 logon. Right. So you've got independent access to your data set for extractions.
That's fantastic.
So that's an interesting comment. So it was unintended consequence of being, again, being flexible about the solution.
Sure, yeah, and I guess that is one of the reasons you mentioned earlier, being able to take all of your data and access it, even if Azure is unavailable for some reason. That's not not something to scoff at, because
no, it does happen.
It might happen.
Yep.
I know they're very resilient, but these things might happen. So this is the dashboard for a SaaS Backup. As you see, it's we've moved to a very material design in a lot of our products, which I really like. Makes it really easy to navigate. You can see all the services that are currently being backed up. You can see your jobs. It's a kind of at a glance view of what's happening. In our actual service, we can see what we're backing up, and we can also see what service accounts are used in order to do these backups. So there's a lot of control, a lot of visibility through this dashboard for the Office 365 administrator, who can then activate, deactivate, or create new accounts or sync new accounts. From an account perspective, I think one thing that it was on the slide, but something I like in particular is the ability to have separate role management. So where different administrators you might have different people who are allowed to access and restore from.
You might want to mention a spoiler alert. You've just let everyone know that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Oh, don't. Yes. Well, he has no emails there that Alfred doesn't see anyway. And also, I guess from a security and a regulatory perspective, being able to maintain your data retention policies in different ways is something that we've put a lot of thought into from our customer base. And so being able to either store data forever, 10 years or 7 years, to actually purge mailboxes out of the backup system completely. So definitely for people concerned about GDPR or those sorts of privacy, where somebody says, please delete everything about me, that is something that we can absolutely do through the purge construct. Searching for mailboxes is also something that's really nice. I think all of the search fields in this are very user-friendly, understanding that, as an Exchange or a SharePoint or a OneDrive administrator, you don't want to have to go and hunt through every, is it Bruce Wayne or Batman? Well, it's just search for either of them. When we look at the services that are being backed up, for example, for Exchange, what I find and what I really like is that it's a very consistent UI, no matter which product you're talking about, whether it's Exchange or SharePoint. The product uses the right terminology, so we're talking about mailboxes in Exchange and sites in SharePoint and groups and teams and so on. But the construct of what am I protecting, how granular do I want to go, that's all the same. And for each service, we have backup policies based on tiers. Did you want to have a chat about what tiers are in terms of recovery point objectives, Matt?
But most just comes down to, you back up 12 hours, 24 hours. It's really just a method by which how often do you want to back up, and you may have more crucial mailboxes that you want to back up more often and have a much lower RPO. It's as simple as it gets, really. Okay,
is there a way at the moment to lower that RPO? So I think 12 hours there.
I think at the moment 12 hours is where we are. There hasn't been a lot of demand for more than 12 hours. But, again, we're happy to take suggestions. If someone says to me, we may have a really high priority group that needs an hour, but really speaking, you're backing up, right? Remember, we're touching past 30 days. So if they can't recover an email or a file naturally in 365 in 30 days, then there's obviously something else that's going wrong, right? And we might be happy to fix that, but right now we're not seeing demand to go less than 12 hours. I think 12 hours is pretty good, given that you typically cover 30 days. Now, you may not like the process, that I can accept, but once you're up and working with SaaS Backup, you're kind of at that point pretty protected, right?
Yeah, and being able to change the retention period there from anything from 1 year, 2, 3, 5.
To forever, right?
Forever, yeah. Is pretty good too.
What I like about this is we had a request a little while back from an NZ customer, and they said, we really want 7 years, and within a month, we had all those policies. So this is the thing I love about SaaS, right? We get instantaneous, well, as close to it. I mean, you would never have got a month update from a full monolithic application, right? It would have been a year.
Yeah. Yeah, so the release notes get added every update. We can see all the previous update release notes as well. So every time there's a new feature or function, you're not in the dark. It's all available to see what's changed. Having a look at, I guess, the granularity. So let's look at the existing mailboxes. What are some of the things that we can do around protected mailboxes in terms of finding out what's been backed up and what's protected and what's not? You want to go into that a bit?
I guess, well, in essence, basically, when you go into it, you've got all the control to understand which has been backed up, how it's been backed up, when it was backed up last, did it fail to back up for whatever reason, a particular area or component. There's actually a lot of information that you can pull out from the when you get from the detail from the screen. There's also the opportunity to actually use, you can send information out of the 365 environment also. So if you have a seam or something you want to track as well from an audit perspective, you can do that. But really speaking, it's very straightforward in what its status is. You know, green, good, and it's done its job.
Yep.
You can really rely on that, truly. And then red, obviously, it failed, and you can drill down into what part, and then restart it, and then look at the problem. And as I mentioned, if it doesn't work the second time round, and you're watching it, then jump on cloud.com and go ask, right? They'll probably have a fix for you within a very short amount of time.
Sure. And to add a mailbox to a backup is as simple as either adding it manually to a tier.
Right.
What happens if there's, let's say I have 50 users who all need to be added to a tier? Is there something that I can do to make that easier?
Yeah, there's a job you can run that does discovery, and discovery allows me to then go and say, well, go get them all that we haven't had before. If that's too broad, then you can run basically a view of unprotected mailboxes and tick them all and go and do them, right?
Yeah. So through this
right.
filter. Okay. So we can easily back up these mailboxes. We can browse into them, as I showed earlier. There's the granularity of that browse. And in order to run a backup, okay, so we put it into tier 3. It's on I think a 24-hour RPO. What is the? But I want to back it up straight away.
Yeah,
I can run a backup.
Yep.
Immediately.
Yep.
And we'll kick that off. And meanwhile, we'll go back and have a look at some of those mails and maybe do a restore.
Yep.
Just a question there. If, on data recovery, if it's green and you can see the item that you need to restore within the SaaS console, do you guarantee recovery and data validity?
Yeah, so we have we have a RPO SLO. So again, it's an SLO, right? So it's not. Is it a guarantee? We're going to be careful with the word guarantee. However, the SLO is very clear, and I think from my perspective, I haven't had any customer yet, and we've got about 1 million mailboxes globally now. And that's protected by SaaS Backup, which is a significant amount of mailboxes. I haven't heard anyone complain about it per se, but be very clear to your answer. If you click on restore, it will arrive back in either the person's mailbox or the PSD format or someone else's mailbox within 5 minutes. Now, the variable to that statement is that if you're doing a full exchange restore, for example, which is kind of crazy, but who knows, then obviously the amount of content of data being restored back to 365 will slow it down.
Yeah.
But you'll see job success as it goes through its process.
Okay, well let's do that. Actually, let's click a couple of them and let's restore a couple of them. So in terms of restore options, you did say, yeah, restoring to the same mailbox, restoring to a different user's mailbox, where we could search for a mailbox if we have one. Oh, Matt, sorry, you're Matt, not Matthew.
Yep. That's fine, both.
So let's kick off a restore and we'll see how it goes in the job screen.
Yeah, and you go to job screen and just, right.
So you can see those running jobs in the background and all the completed jobs as well. So I guess that's a nice segue kind of to the audit capabilities of SaaS Backup. What do we keep a record of, and what do we know about what's actually happening under the scenes if I've got multiple administrators?
Yeah, so from an audit perspective, obviously you've got a overall account and access all tenants. So you can see from that perspective, but from a localized version, what I like about it is you click on the reporting button and you get to a component where I can look at activity log, job histories, what was restored, what was backed up, how it was restored. It's quite granular. Again, you can download it. So you can download it and then inject it into a scene, for example, if you want to do so. But again, like anything in life, you need to make sure that you have responsibility and roles associated with the tenant accounts, and that the right people have access and are not generic accounts. Right. That's a very important component. By having generic accounts, you actually will fail an audit, right? Because anyone can access that generic account. So Phoebe as an administrator, Matt as an administrator, that's the component you run on, right? It's associated with an ID that we know, but what I like mostly is that the reporting content's fairly verbose, which is what I want, right? If I want to drill down and see it, I've got all the detail and understand about it.
I did see a question: what format does the activity log export in? I believe it's CSV. It's a CSV. If there is an interest in having different log formats, please do let me know, and we can pass that feedback along.
I think CSV is probably the safest place to be, right? You can import it, convert it to practically anything. Just going back on the services, I just want to quickly jump into some of the others just so that we can see that they're very, very similar in construct. So in SharePoint, protected sites, it's a protected mailbox. In a protected site, instead of having a email address, it's a URL. Jumping into that, we can actually see all the content of that SharePoint site in, the vernacular of SharePoint, which is contents and sites and subsites. And we can actually restore very granularly to a single document or an entire site if we wanted to. So I guess that's a nice feature to have, to be able to restore an entire site somewhere else in case you wanted to make review some things that had changed in that site. You can browse into it again and search for files, and even restore individual versions of files, not those ones because I don't have any copies of them. And again, what we've done is deliver a consistent console to back up both 365 and Salesforce and restore them in the same manner. Salesforce is probably a stronger argument for backup and restore, because whilst Salesforce definitely backs up your data, there is no mechanism by which you can actively recover that data. So what happens is you log a support case with Salesforce, typically $10,000 US for the ticket for restore, and they will, after X period of time, they will give you a complete extraction of your Salesforce environment in an Excel spreadsheet. And I've seen one; they are massive. And that poses another problem, by the way. Typically, you've got to FTP it because it's so big. And then it's up to you to restore the bit that you need back in, right? Which is a massive problem for people. So, really speaking, if you did any kind of restore twice a year, 3 times a year, then you would be able to pay the cost of running Salesforce, SaaS Backup Salesforce.
Right. Cool.
Let alone all the benefits of being able to restore.
And so the SaaS Backup for Salesforce, in terms of destination, it's the same. We've got SaaS Backup and BYO storage. Yeah, so BYO, so bring your storage for SaaS Backup. We're waiting on a release code. We do support Object Store, our own, but we will be able to start to do more things around delivering that into Blob, for example, or even perhaps GCP, right? Sure. Excellent. And Salesforce is available now.
Yeah, so we're still, so it says register, but it's early release.
Okay.
So we're just making sure that everyone's comfortable and happy with what it does. We trialled it for a large organisation in Melbourne about a month ago, and they were pretty impressed by it. And again, we're going to continuously update and add features and values to the product, right? And what I love here is, if you have Office 365, or your customer does, and they have Salesforce, this is a perfect answer.
So we have a couple of minutes left. I did see a couple of questions come through. If I don't get around to them, I do apologise. I would highly recommend, in terms of the website to get an idea of the cost, do go to Cloud Central. The URL is on your screen right now. There is a lot more information also on our blogs on cloud.netapp.com and also on blog.netapp.com around data protection of your SaaS. And we have YouTube videos and a number of other resources that I will share in the post email that you'll get. There's some resources now. So cloud.netapp.com, our SaaS Backup blogs, to try it, to do the trial. So the trial is 30 days. That's correct. Unlimited. Yes. Yep. So, and then from a trial, you can convert that into a production copy, so production version. So you can just keep using it if you like it. Yeah. And the blogs are also there. And in the last 2 minutes, the other reminders, NetApp Insights, our technical conference for customers, partners, and our local, our internal amazing staff is next week in Las Vegas from the 22nd to the 24th of October at Mandalay Bay. I will be there. I will be making a lot of noise with the NetApp A team, so please come say hi if you're going to be at the conference. And if not, then do check out our Twitter, the NetApp ANZ Twitter and Instagram accounts. I will be posting lots of photos of my friends and colleagues and customers and partners having a great time. If you can't make it to Insight Vegas, then Insight Barcelona is in the first week of December, the 3rd to the 5th. Again, we will have a great contingent of Aussies and Kiwis over there, so if you can make it, it'll be a great event. I will also be there. Our next Geek Out is in November, and it will be the last Geek Out of the year, so we're going to make it a really good one. We're going to have a demonstration from Veeam on their backup and their integration with NetApp, so please do register for that if you are interested. And finally, if you've got any feedback for today's session, if you've got any comments, if you like the new slide deck, or if you just want to laugh at Matt because he's got a chipped tooth, then please send an email. Send an email through. You will get an email from us anyway with all the links and the content of the slide and so on. So, and we will answer the rest of your questions via email. Thank you so much for joining us. I think I've actually made it on time this time. And thank you, Matt, for being an amazing guest.
My pleasure.
It's always great having you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you all.